All right, friends, we've got a bit of a problem. My fridge doesn't work, and I'm sure that's a shocker to absolutely no one. So yeah, it's a bit of a mess here, and the wife is just in ruins. She hates the fact that she can't use her freezer anymore. And well, we started noticing that the fridge was tripping the breaker in our garage after about 5 seconds of being turned on. So that's a problem. And you can see here, I'll explain what I was doing in a second. But anyway, I wasn't sure if I wanted to call a fridge repair guy or if I wanted to just try taking it on myself. I mean, I could make things worse. That's definitely a possibility. But I decided in my infinite wisdom that I definitely should try, because why not, right? I mean, worst case, I fail and then I have to hire someone anyway. And we've been running a troubleshooting series on our channel for a very long time in Fix or Flop. If you've been watching that, thanks for the support. This is kind of like that, but appliance edition. I know it might sound kind of lame, but I think we can figure this one out, and I think you'll enjoy it as well. It's not PC tech, but it's tech, and there's a lot of overlap there. So if you've run into a fridge problem in the past, maybe this will help you, give you a bit more confidence. You don't have to hire someone and pay hundreds of dollars in labor alone. Sometimes they upcharge you on parts as well to fix your fridge or your oven or insert appliance here. So here we go. You ready? Stay with me.
NZXT's H7 series cases offer plenty of hardware support and a clean aesthetic sure to complement any build. Choose between white or black variants, as well as standard, flow, or elite trims for the right mixture of airflow and beauty. There's plenty of room up top for a fan rad combo larger than just a single 120 or 140, and support for up to a 360mm up front exists for beefy cooling wherever it's needed. You'll also find several fans included depending on the model. If you choose the white one, you'll get white fans, so that's nice. NZXT cases are overall great values, as you'll find, and you can learn more about them by clicking the link below.
Now, I've got the fridge pulled out, so it's a bit tight at this point, but that's because we need to get behind it to do what we're gonna do. Long story short, the wife opened up the freezer and noticed that the light was off, nothing was moving, the compressor was off. She checked the fridge, same thing, light was off, and suspected that something was wrong. She checked the outlet, it was plugged in, no problem. That's when she called me, and I realized that the breaker was tripped. That's this breaker right here, breaker 9 for, it looks like refry, but I promise you that means fridge. And yeah, so this one here was basically tripped off. And I noticed that it would happen every single time I would turn it back on. The fridge would turn on for 5 seconds and then it would trip again, switch back to the off position. Now that outlet there is where the fridge is normally plugged in. I'm not sure why the cover's cracked. I think that was like that when we built it. GG American Homes. Anyway, I moved the cable for the fridge to this connector here, which runs off of a different breaker, and same thing happened. After about 5 seconds, that breaker tripped as well. I then took my multimeter to both outlets. They were both registering around 120 volts, which is what you want, AC of course. So it's not an outlet problem. We have so far isolated things to just the fridge. Something is wrong with this thing. That's when we squeezed back here and noticed we might be a bit in over our head. So this is the power cable, of course, and this other line here is for the water. So we have a water filter, dispenser, and an ice maker in the fridge, and that's what that supplies. The very first thing we were worried about was the compressor going out. Maybe it was shorted, and that was what was causing the fridge to turn off after a few seconds. We went ahead and disconnected that. There's actually a cable right here you can unplug, just 2 or 3 wires running into it. That allows us to bypass the compressor, but the rest of the fridge should turn on. So again, this is in PC sense very similar to bypassing a graphics card, let's say, or removing DDR4. If the system refuses to power on at all, removing either of those components and attempting to power on should still give you something. If one of those 2 components is bad, you should get some sort of reaction. Good thing is, when we disconnected this, the fridge still exhibited the same symptom. It still turned on for 5 seconds and then shut right back off. Then we figured, okay, well, maybe it's this front panel here. This is the only panel on the in the fridge, and the cables for that run up from here. So we were able to very easily disconnect both of these, again with the compressor reconnected because we'd already ruled that one out, and turn the fridge back on, reset the breaker, and it still tripped after 5 seconds, which means none of these cables running to any of these lights, the little circuit behind this, are to blame. That's, I guess, a good thing. The next thing we wanted to do was roll out the power cable. This was kind of a tangent, but we were at this point a bit clueless as to what could be wrong. This power cable runs directly into this connector, and this powers everything else in the fridge. So we wanted to disconnect this and see if the breaker still tripped. It did not, which means it is definitely something inside the fridge causing the short. So if it's not the compressor, if it's not the front panel, and it's not the wiring assembly, What else could it be? Well, what else makes a fridge work? That's the big question. What else is involved in this system? And this involved a ton of research. I am definitely not a pro by any means, so if I say something incorrect, just all caps me, especially if you're an appliance guy or gal, just, yeah, help us all out. Pepsi, could you please not? This is my demonstration, thank you. Okay, so I believe this here is called the evaporator. And long story short, this is where it gets very cold. You got refrigerant running through here. It evaporates in these tubes and makes it very cold around the assembly. Kind of looks like a radiator, very similar in terms of design, but a radiator's on the other side of this, and that's where the heat gets dumped out. So you've got heat on one side being dumped out, and you've got it very cold on the other side. And this is behind typically a very large panel. This is in the freezer section of the refrigerator assembly. We pulled this out and then started messing with those cables up there. We disconnected this fan first. Now this fan actually works to get the cold air from the evaporator into the fridge. So there's a little scoop here. Sorry, the autofocus is gonna be pretty awful in here. Anyway, this is a very large scoop, and if you follow that up, you'll see there's a duct up top, and that duct runs directly into the fridge. So your fridge stays cold in this sort of refrigerator anyway, as a kind of a byproduct of how cold it is in your freezer, and that fan helps, you know, move that cold air into it. Anyway, we disconnected that little motor there, and we still got the same problem. The breaker was being tripped. We disconnected a few other cables, and wouldn't you know it, we actually were able to get the refrigerator to stay on with something else disconnected. Now, what was that thing? That's where this bad boy comes in. This here, I hope I ordered the right part. I'm pretty sure I did. Connectors look, yeah, the connectors look the same. All right, that's good stuff. This here is essentially one large heating element, and its job is to keep the evaporator from icing up. So it gets, again, very cold in that little assembly I just showed you, and you will have ice buildup. In fact, check it out. This is what the fridge looked like after a week without one of these in there. It totally iced up. I had to take my wife's hairdryer to it. I didn't want to use a heat gun because I didn't want to melt the insulation around the wiring or any of the rubber seals. But yeah, I had to melt all this ice because, long story short, as this ice builds up, it will prevent your fridge, especially from staying or remaining cold, and that's obviously not desirable. So if you don't have one of these in there, then you have to manually defrost fridges. That's kind of how we've been doing it for actually several decades until recently. But this heating element here will get very hot. It will glow, literally orange, and its only job is just to keep ice from forming on the evaporator. This is what's bad. This is why our fridge was not working. This thing right here, a freaking pipe. So now that you've been caught up to speed, our next task is to get this evaporator out of here so that we can slide the heating element out from underneath it. Again, it wraps around it, that's by design. So we need to pull this out. I gotta remove a couple of screws, and then it should just kind of swing out, hinged pivot. We got these things in the way, it might be a problem. But once we get that out, we can slide the new one back in, wire things back up, and the fridge should be good to go. So please enjoy watching as I make an absolute buffoon of myself. Once these two are out, by the way, make sure your fridge is off and unplugged when you do this. That would be wise. I'll pull these two little styrofoam pieces out. I think this is just for vibration for that fan when it kicks on. And then we'll disconnect the cable. All right. There we go, fan assembly's out. And for this next part, I'm gonna put some gloves on because this evaporator assembly is razor sharp. You slice your fingers very easily on this stuff. See, this is gonna be a problem because I can't get this out of this fridge. It's hitting these stupid posts that stick out. Why on earth is this here? Again, the very last thing you wanna do is puncture any of these tubes running through here. There's refrigerant in there. You're gonna have a nightmare of a task ahead of you. So I'm trying my best to wiggle. This should just slide right out. Again, these stupid posts are right in the way.
2,000 years later.
Okay, this took forever. You see how far I bent the evaporator to get this thing out. And again, kind of sketchy, but at least now I have clearance to get this other one in, which, yeah, it's gonna be harder getting this one in because I can't really see what I'm doing on the back side of this. Something like that, I guess. Yes. And there we have it, about 30 minutes worth of work. Just trying to figure out how to wiggle this thing out again around those stupid guardrails. We had to remove the evaporator from the metal housing that it sits in, which required some bending. So yeah, kind of got to finesse it a little bit. We'll reconnect this stuff. I'm not going to put everything back in yet. I'm going to plug the plug the refrigerator back into the outlet and make sure that we don't have the same symptom as before, because I would hate to redo this all over again. Yes, we have lights. Heating element's connected. Normally this is when it would turn off. You can hear the compressor kicking in. Looks okay, looks good. All right, so let's get the rest of the stuff in here and we'll check long term to make sure the fridge is cooling properly. We've got all the wiring taken care of, the motor's back in with the fan, and there's also, I think, a temperature sensor probe in there. So it looks good. We're gonna put the metal panel on now, because remember, the heating element gets very hot and the evaporator gets very cold, so you wanna insulate that from the remainder of the freezer. All right, now we gotta wiggle this thing back in. Let's see how this is gonna go. So it's something like that. And we've got a few screws to take care of on either side. All right, and with the panel back in, let's get the power cable plugged in. Oh, it's a big stretch. There we go. Looks like, yep, we've got lights in here. Compressor kicked on. It'll probably turn off in a second, and it'll cycle later. But yeah, looks actually staying on. So yeah, compressor stayed on, that's good stuff. And now it's time to put all these panels back on. It's really gross back here. Take a moment to clean up while you're here, because you might not be here again for a while. Hopefully you're not. And this last one, which I think I have to open both doors for. Yes, and it's definitely cold in the freezer now. So everything does seem to be working fine. This last trim piece just snaps in. Couple clips on both sides. Be careful not to snag any of the wires. It's a bit more stubborn over here. Yeah, it was this water filter door. That's what was causing it. There we go. Looks better now. Last two Phillips screws, and there we are. Perfect timing, because the kids are home. I need a vacation. Oh, I am exhausted. It's been a long day. Did some yard work outside. I got sick again. I was sick like 3 weeks ago, and I'm sick again. And really needed to tackle this because, again, what you were seeing earlier with me having to manually thaw out that evaporator, I didn't want to do that another time. So I went ahead and tackled the fridge issue, this issue right here, while I was in there. So it's not, look, it could have been a more complicated thing, yes. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, well, you can only do that because it was easy. I mean, it was right in front of you. You just started unplugging stuff. Honestly, that's what a lot of troubleshooting is narrowing down potential issues, removing variables from play to rule them out as problems. And it was just really cool and really rewarding to kind of apply the same troubleshooting steps that I've been learning in the Fix or Flop playlist to other things outside of PC tech or PC world. So it was really cool. Thanks for tagging along. I apologize if you didn't like this style of video. That's okay. There won't be many of them, I imagine. But I had a lot of fun with this one, and hopefully, at the very least, you found it entertaining, but maybe you learned a thing or two as well. Maybe you built a bit more confidence into working on your own appliances. It can save you a good amount of money. This replacement part was $36. $36. I looked it up on Whirlpool's website. The same exact part was like $100 and something. And you add to that the labor, probably 2 to 3 hours worth of labor for a technician to come in. He's probably going to charge anywhere between $50 and $100 an hour. I mean, you're looking at a several $100 job. And I did it in about 2 hours and for $36. I'll take that over $500 of just all upfront costs any day of the week. And I got to learn a thing or two in the process, which was also very cool. So thanks for watching. Consider leaving a comment down below, subscribing. If you haven't joined our public Discord server, please do that. Consider supporting us on Patreon, and stay tuned for the next video. My name is Greg. Thanks for learning with me. I'm gonna go to sleep now. See you guys. Ugh.